My name is Karen Noyes. Welcome. I'm a reference librarian for LA County Library. This is our third event in our series of interfaith conversations titled Community Care, Libraries, Faith and Faith Organizations and Conversation. Tonight is the third of 4 virtual roundtables exploring the intersections between community, service in libraries, and faith organizations. These roundtables were inspired by the idea that both libraries and faith organizations provide community care and service. The details of why and how our respective organizations provide service might differ slightly, but we hope to explore a middle ground where many types of community groups can meet in solidarity. This event, called Putting It Into Practice, will focus on the techniques and resources in our organizations to deliver support or inspiration to members of our communities. So the main question is, how do service providers and religious leaders determine what communities and individuals need to thrive, and what methods are used in providing care? So before we move on to the discussion, we'd like to give our land acknowledgement, share our land acknowledgement. The County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Sorano, Kizh, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. We are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments, including, in no particular order, the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino Tongva Indians of California Tribal Council, Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians, Kizh Nation, San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. We also have more housekeeping here. We have some agreements for this discussion. We acknowledge these agreements to ensure that we maintain a space and conversation that's healthy and respectful towards everyone. Everyone is welcome here, and we are equals. We come to listen and learn, not to convince or convert. We leave our assumptions and our disagreements behind. We will not compare one set of ideals to another's practices, but instead compare ideals with ideals and practices with practices. We will accept controversy only with civility. Okay. Panelists, excellent. And before I start, I forgot to mention that the moderator tonight is my colleague, Matt Gill. So if you are having any technical trouble or have any questions, Matt is there to help you connect you with the panelists. Thank you. So speaking of panelists, we have 2 panelists tonight, Rabbi Heather Miller. Rabbi Miller is the founder of Keeping It Sacred, a global community dedicated to the intrepid exploration of sacred texts, the practice of meaningful rituals, and the unwavering pursuit of social justice. She's an executive board member of the Women's Rabbinic Network and immediate past president of the Interfaith Council of the Greater Rancho Santa Margarita. She has served as spiritual leader for congregations across the United States, including the world's first LGBT-founded Jewish synagogue, and recently has been granted a 2022-2023 fellowship from the Center of Rabbinic Innovation. And our other guest tonight is Nirinjan Singh Khalsa. Nirinjan has served as a commissioner on the City of Los Angeles Human Relations Commission for more than 15 years and was president of the commission for more than 6 years. He's the executive director of the California Sikh Council and a cultural intelligence educator and advisor to the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, Los Angeles Police Department, the Los Angeles and Orange County Sheriff's Departments, and many other public and private organizations. We had also one more guest this evening, Reverend Jan Milhan Martin. She won't be able to join us this evening to attend to a personal matter. We hope we still expect this conversation to be productive and enlightening. We'll miss her. We hope she'll be able to attend our next event. So welcome, Rabbi and Nirinjan. How are you this evening?
Hey, good evening. Good.
Great to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
It's a pleasure to be here and meet you. I'm really excited. I'm watching the last two workshops, and they've been discussions have been absolutely fascinating. So I'm really excited about this one, where it's kind of putting into practice I was thinking it's more like the nuts and bolts of how we create community and not just create community, create thriving community and address the needs and desires of that community. We've been talking a lot the past 2 sessions about community, but I was curious, and before we really get down to the nuts and bolts of what is community in your respective faith traditions. We keep talking about it, but what is it? And I know it depends on time and place and location, but who are the people? Kind of a snapshot. Who are the people that come and visit in your communities? I don't know if which one of our Nirinjan, you want to start?
Rabbi's first.
Rabbi's first.
Sure. Thanks again for having me. Great question. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I'll just give a little anecdote. I used to I've worked at different congregations over the years, and one of them had a basketball court. And during the recess for the religious school, so there'd be like 10 minutes, kids could get a snack, play basketball. I decided we should play round the world basketball. And the round the world basketball was, people would have to shoot kind of like horse, but every time that they shot, they had to say a country where Jews live. Okay. So America, Israel, Canada, Argentina, Iraq, Philippines, India. Like the trick was that there was no wrong answer. There are Jews everywhere in the world. So when we think of Jewish community, we have to really eliminate any vision of what you would think of when you Google Rabbi or you Google Jew. Please don't do that right now. It's actually very anti-Semitic out there. But what will come up are these pictures of a very narrow understanding of what a Jew looks like. And in fact, I used to serve a deaf congregation, it was the Hebrew Association of the Deaf. And the sign for Jew, for American Sign Language and International Sign Language, I forget which is which, forgive me, but one was like this and one was like this, both referring to the beard, right? And again, that's, understanding Jews as male and as someone with a beard. These are, when you ask what is community, who's in Jewish community, it's really, we vary in terms, we're not monolithic, and we vary in terms of gender, sexual orientation, race, even creed. You don't have to believe in God to be a Jew, and that's an amazing thing as well. So Jewish identity is really what brings our community together. If you understand yourself to be Jewish, that's who's in our community.
That's why everybody thinks I'm Jewish. I didn't know that. Anyway, in the Sikh community, community is pretty much everything. We have a terminology that we call the broad scale of the Sikh community the Sangat. And the Sangat is a gathering of devout people. Okay, in this case, in our case, they're Sikhs, and we worship the way Sikhs worship. Our strength is in our community, just as Judaic tribe of Israel, their strength is in their community, and it's the same for most other world religions. And it's really hard, you know, in Sikhism, we don't have a hierarchy. We don't have bishops and archbishops and pastors and all this stuff. And we consider ourselves the ultimate true democracy, which means everybody has a say, and that's good. And that means everybody has a say, and that's difficult. And I think the rabbi can relate to that too. You know, as a community, we want to be recognized for supporting each other, but it's more important that we want to be recognized for supporting people at large, the world community. And to Sikhs without service, there's no value. You know, as Sikhs and other faiths believe that it's only through service that you can heal your own transgressions. And healing other people's wounds heals your own. So community is extremely important to Sikhs. We're only 500 years old as a religion, almost 600 now. So we haven't had a chance to fragment as much as Christianity and Judaism and a number of other faith communities. Give us time. You know, we'll probably figure that out. But the reality is that we want to be known as a community always. And we want to be called on as a community always, not just as a certain individual and as a certain you know, identity of an individual. So I don't know if that answers the question about community. We tend to do everything as community. When we go out and like we feed on Skid Row or something like this, it's really easy. We just call the community. Everybody believes in service and people volunteer most of the time. But you know, I guess that's it. I mean, ultimately, people in the Sikh community are relatively monolithic as far as the vast majority are Punjabi, which are not, because the faith was born and originated in northern India. So 95% of all Sikhs are probably Punjabi and mostly born into the faith, because as a rule, we do not evangelize. If you're a Christian, we think you should be a good Christian. If you're a Jew, you should be a good Jew. And if you're a Muslim, you should be humble and be a good Muslim. And, you know, we don't try to make our community grow by telling other people we should do what Sikhs do. First of all, being a Sikh isn't always easy. Most of the time it's not, because we are always try to be at the forefront of making social change and doing service for the community, even when there's sacrifice involved. So I don't always recommend it to everybody, but if people do come, people do, you know, see what Sikhs do and they want to be part of that. But I adopted being a Sikh about 52 years ago now. So I'm not Punjabi. I'm what they call a Gura Sikh, a white Sikh. You know, when I go to India, people look twice and they say, looks like a Sikh, but the guy's white. What's going on here? So, but anyway, I mean, if there's anything else I can say, that's what I can think of off the top of my head as far as community goes.
Yeah, I appreciated also when you were talking about how, it's not always easy to be a Sikh. And, that is one of the ways that's one of the reasons why we don't proselytize either, right? Is like, it's actually a great responsibility and a burden to take on Judaism. There's an understanding that when people take on the identity of being Jewish, you're taking on the responsibility of 613 commandments, not just the 10 commandments, but 613. So, and that's why we wear a prayer shawl that has 613 knots in it, and we place it on our shoulders, right? Like Atlas, right? This idea that it's called the Ol Malchut Shamayim, which means the yoke of heaven. You know what a yoke is, like for a cow that would, or a cattle that would plow a yard, it's the collar that they like have to, the burden they have to bear. And so likewise, and what those 613 commandments mean to each individual Jewish person differs. Not all 613 commandments can be done because some of them pertain to a temple standing, and we don't have a temple meaning the temple in the time of Jerusalem temple, sacrificial cult piece of it. So no one can do all 613 commandments, but to the extent that you feel commanded, is like, it's actually a question I asked my study group today. What do you feel commanded to do as a Jewish person? What are you commanded to do? For some people, that's keeping kosher. For some people, it's not. But for some people, it's, to stand with the oppressed wherever they are. And so, as I mentioned, not monolithic. We will not have monolithic answers in Judaism, but the questions are pretty much the same. We all have the same questions, and there are lots of them. We're the people of the question, not just the people of the book. But yeah, that's another part of it. And one other thing that I want to mention also, I'd be remiss if I didn't, is there are some pieces of liturgy, some prayers that require a quorum of 10 people. You might have heard of a minion, not like M-I-N-I-O-N-S, but minion, M-I-N-Y-A-N. It's a quorum of 10 Jewish people. Traditionally, it's understood as men who are over the age of 13, but in egalitarian progressive Jewish traditions, like the one I belong to, the Reform movement, it's 10 Jews and 10 people who are required to be there for prayers like the call to worship, to open up prayer and understand that we're kind of magnifying each other's prayers in a different way as a quorum. And also one that I really appreciate is for the prayers for the dead. You are really only instructed to, and this doesn't happen in all cases, and there's loopholes where if you have a Torah, maybe that could count as one person, so you really only need 9, whatever. We can get into the weeds if you want, but you need to have at least 10 people to be able to recite the prayer for the dead. And I really appreciate that, because there's an understanding that there's strength in community, and when we're holding this burden of grief, that having people around us is essential to our moving through this prayer and through time. So the community does provide that function as well. And also several, holiday functions also require a quorum, a minion.
I think what you both said is beautiful. I was also thinking both your traditions, and the kind of we have in the library is sort of a, not an outright, to borrow the word, proselytizing, but it's more like a come and see. And both traditions is like, just come and see. And if you want to be with us, be in communion with us. Or if you want to take your time, take your time. But I literally like that. I see that with the library. You come in, you're like, come in, see what we're doing, see what we're about, and maybe come back another time.
Well,
Please.
Information is everything. I can tell you from experience that, learn about Sikhs, because nobody knows about Sikhs almost. People see me walking down the street, and if I ask the first 100 people I meet, they say, well, you're a Muslim, obviously. You got a turban on, you got a beard, you must be a Muslim. And I say, no. And they say, okay, well, you're a Hindu. Well, no, I'm not a Hindu. Okay, you're some white guy that hung out in India for too long. No, I'm a Sikh. A sheik? So, libraries are amazing places. They open the door to understanding on every level, especially a library like LA County Library. They have information on anything and everything. And I encourage you to learn about Sikhs. I encourage you to learn about Jews, and I encourage you to learn about Muslims. And, if everybody in the world says they want peace, nobody's working for it. Peace takes understanding. It takes work to get to know each other. It takes trusting when you're afraid to trust. It takes a lot of different things. And if we are ever going to really find a way to peacefully live on this planet without destroying each other, well, the seeds of what we're seeing now is what needs to happen. Rabbi knows this. A lot of people know this, especially in the interfaith community here in LA, because we're the best laboratory for interfaith relationships, I think, anywhere. And what we found is it's possible. It's possible to have interfaith relationships. It's possible for me to respect and understand the rabbi as a rabbi and not compare it to what I believe and think that she's right or wrong. Because the simple reason is, it's like there's not one language on this planet. There's not one way to relate to God on this planet. And if God wanted that, we all think he's all powerful. Don't you think he could have figured it out? The simple reality is different people have different hearts and need to find their path to God in different ways. And this is probably the most important thing that we've discovered here in LA in the interfaith community, is that it's okay. And there's so many people even in America that still have not got to that point. They need to be secure enough in their own faith, whether it be Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Sikhs, Buddhists, anything, that they're not threatened by the path of another person. And I'll tell you, 99 times out of 100, that other person doesn't want to change you to their path either. So you don't have to be worried about that. So anyway, it's an amazing thing what is happening, and the seeds we're planting for interfaith cooperation are a true path to peace. But there are so many old habits that need to be broken. There are so many old vendettas that people still hang on to. There are so many different things that hold us back from that real understanding of each other, that it's difficult right now. But that just means we have to fight all the harder to plant those seeds of peace.
I think one way that I think about interfaith dialogue and interfaith work is to have the humility to be present with another person, to not only hear what they believe, but also why they came to understand it that way, right? Why they believe what they believe. And then also just to have the humility to understand that, and if I grew up in that life circumstance, I also would believe exactly what they believe, right? So it's not the judgmental piece, it's the appreciation of the human experience that led someone to be where they are. So I really appreciate what you said, Nirinjan.
But it enhances our own faith in the way we practice, because we say, well, they do that. In my way, I do this, and it's really, really close. Or it's really, really important. And sometimes I can say, well, they're experiencing this. How can I, through my own belief, experience that too, if I find that attractive? So there's a lot to be gained from this. There's a lot to be gained from this. And as soon as people stop being afraid of each other, a lot of it can grow pretty quick.
Thank you so much. That was so lovely. And thank you for the plug for LA County Library. We appreciate that too. I just wanted to mention, we do have resources on spirituality and religion, and we'll be putting some links to some resources at the end of the discussion. So if you're curious to find out more, we have books, we have things to help you. So I'm thinking of moving to the next question, which ties in the first. We touched on it in the first, which is what needs or questions draw people to your faith communities. So for instance, as a reference librarian, a lot of people come and it's usually a question of how to accomplish something. What is this? I imagine the questions that people come to you with are quite different.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm thinking about like when people come to me asking to convert, and I ask, oh, what's interesting to you? There's that. And then there's also just people who come to me to ask like about Judaism. And sometimes sometimes if they're Christian or Muslim, they want to know like what the Jews think about Torah. Remember, we're not monolithic, so there's no one answer, but we think about what do the Jews think about X, Y, or Z, and as a means to understand their own religious tradition from a different angle, right? From the way that Judaism was part of their traditional line. The one question that I always get a kick out of is sometimes people come to me to ask about Judaism because they want to have a really good family life. And I always laugh at that because some Jews have a good family life and some don't. And so it's really interesting to see how sometimes, people's perceptions of your tradition, your faith tradition, are of a particular understanding. I've also had the question of like, Judaism is such a love-filled, wonderful tradition. How can I learn more about it? It doesn't have, afterlife scariness, and I've also had people who I know who have said, oh yeah, I converted out of Judaism because the Jewish God is a very angry God and I found love in Christianity, right? So it's interesting because, Karen, you ask about like, what are the questions that we get? I get both sides of so many of these questions. It's wonderfully enlightening to me to see like what is the perception of the Jewish community through these questions, but no question is a bad question. I think that those are really ripe opportunities to complicate things for people and to go further. I think a lot of people, when I was working at UCLA Medical Center as a chaplain, a lot of times, and also just as a rabbi in the community, people turn to religion around when they have medical crises, right? So like the questions that people come up with is, is there a heaven? Am I going to heaven? Rabbi, do you believe in God? Or how do I deal with this tragic circumstance of my loved one being in this medical crisis? Or how do I understand, where can I find strength at difficult times? A lot of it is where can I find strength in difficult times? I mean, I think there's an entire organization called Beit Teshuvah, which works with Jews who are going through addiction and who have addictions and who are working through that. And they address it from a religious perspective. So you might find in Jewish communities different healing circles. We have a healing circle at Keeping It Sacred every Thursday. We just had one today. Right now, how do I understand what's going on in the Middle East? How do I make sense of it? How do I deal with the crisis that is happening in this geopolitical space and as it relates to me as an individual, right? So, so people come to Judaism and ask all kinds of questions.
Do they also ask practical questions? Sort of, where do I get X service and where do I?
Yeah, so like where can I go for Shabbat services? Are there any high holiday services that you don't have to get charged for, right? That don't require tickets? Questions of, hey, I'm, I had a bar bat mitzvah. I haven't been involved in Judaism, but now I'm engaged and I want a rabbi to marry me. Where can I go? And I think what's really exciting about that question is it's an opportunity for people to reconnect with Judaism as adults and like forge their own path. And whether it's, you know, an interfaith couple or a Jewish dual Jewish faith couple, that's a really exciting time for people. And I love working with people through that. And then also we get the funeral questions, you know, someone I love just died, or someone I love is going to become a bar bat mitzvah. How do I get that started? So yeah, a lot of the life cycle rituals and a baby naming, right? Life cycle rituals as well as holidays and holiday services.
Well, with
That's
Sikhs,
fantastic.
I'm hoping that it's our honesty and integrity. You know, I mean, Sikhs are people too, so sometimes I get a little irritated or embarrassed by what I see some Sikhs doing. But and a lot of times with Sikhism, it's the egalitarianism of it. You know, we believe that everybody sits. Sikhism was born at a time of an extremely oppressive caste system in India. And the founder of the Sikh faith, Guru Nanak, he simply stood up and said, it's nonsense. We're all created by the same God. How can one be lower or higher or worse or better? It just doesn't work like that. So as a matter of fact, that's where the word Sikh came from, to describe the community, because your name delineated your caste in India at that time. So all the people who were students of Guru Nanak's, they changed their name to either Singh for a man or Kaur for a woman. And there is just one name for all Sikhs. And Kaur means princess, that all women should be treated as a princess with respect and grace. And that all men need to have the courage of a lion, Singh means lion, to face the challenges that the world presents. And because of that, the word Sikh actually means someone who seeks to learn. And Sikhs were known as Sikhs of Guru Nanak, students of Guru Nanak, and then the name Sikh just stuck for the community. S-I-K-H. A lot of people say Sikh. It's more closer to its original thing, but I get corrected by my Punjabi brothers and sisters all the time. It's Sikh, and you know.
No, I said it wrong.
Well, no, it's okay. Well, if you're talking to Punjabi, yes, but the word Sikh, you know, Sikh usually means, okay, I got the flu, I'm staying home in America. But the truth is that the word is pronounced Sikh, and but we are Sikhs. We seek the truth. We seek to serve. We seek, you know, we seek God in everything we see. So, you know, we should be known for so many years in India. If you're in trouble, everybody would just say, go find a Sikh, they'll help you. You know, because of political challenges over the last so many years, and that since the 1980s, the government has become more Hindu nationalist. And that means the religious and minorities in India, particularly now with Modi in office, are suffering significantly. So that's a conversation for a different time. But we're hoping that the Sikh community, I mean, we dress, Sikhs wear a turban so you could recognize that we're a Sikh. Sikhs don't cut their hair as a respect to God, to keep us the way God created us naturally, but it's also so that you could recognize who a Sikh is. A Sikh has 5 different articles of faith they keep on them during all the waking hours of the day. Kesh, which is uncut hair, a kata, this steel bracelet, and some of the doctors and lawyers gold plate it because they want to be fancy, but it's still a steel bracelet. Kacheras, which are a certain type of undergarment, which reminds us to be not promiscuous, you know, modest and faithful in our relationships. And kunga, which is a comb, and that's usually worn inside the turban. You don't often see it, but it symbolizes grooming and respect for the body temple. In India, there are a lot of people called sadhu. Well, you've been to India, you've seen the sadhus and everything. And their way of relating to life is to deny life, and they think that brings them closer to God, and as far as I know, probably does for them. But the reality is, Sikhs are not renunciates. Sikhs are householders. We participate in life on the full level. And the fifth is the kirpan, which is a really important symbol for Sikhs. It's to us, it represents a sort of righteousness, that we're obligated to protect the weak and the innocent. And it's a small ceremonial, most of them are about this big, and they're a knife that we carry on us all the time. If you're what we call a baptized Sikh, like myself, an Amritdhari Sikh, you're committed to God that you're going to keep these symbols all the time. And the symbols simply mean like this. This is a symbol that I'm married. When I see it, it reminds me I'm married. And when other people see it, it reminds them that I need to act like I'm married. Okay. This is my bond to God. It's the same thing. When I look at it, when I feel it, it hasn't come off in about 30 years, this one, because my hand grew bigger. Anyway, but the reality is that it reminds me of my commitment to life at all times, those 5 symbols. And that's a little bit off what people look, but it's one of the ways to identify a Sikh too, because the social pressures in America make it very hard to keep a Sikh's religiously observant appearance. Especially after 9/11, you were attacked. Sikhs were attacked more than the Muslim community. Neither community should have ever been attacked, but it just shows the ignorance in America about cultural understanding. So anyway, we want people to recognize we're Sikhs. If they're in trouble, we want us to come and find us and help, and we will help them however we can. And with the kirpan, that's simply, it's never drawn in anger. It's never drawn for utilitarian purposes. It can only be drawn to defend the weak and the innocent against mortal threats. And it just reminds us that we are obligated to stand in defense of others. If I see, like, walk down the street and see a woman or someone else being attacked, I can't turn my head and say it's none of my business. I have to do what I can, and it may not be drawing my knife and running into a big fight. It can be calling the police. It can be trying to interrupt. It can be trying to stop that any way that I can. So that's, that's what people look for in Sikhs. And when they get to know Sikhs, that's what they look for also, is an opportunity, if you need something, to come and ask. I'll cut it off there. I'm sure
we have that obligation as well. I love that. There is, we're always looking for these connections too. We have the obligation also of, if someone, there's a concept of a Roda, which is someone who's pursuing another person to kill them. If you see a Roda in American law, you don't have to do anything. Like you won't be brought up on charges. There was that famous case of Kitty Genovese in New York in the 80s, who was this woman who was getting attacked and murdered in her apartment complex courtyard, and a lot of neighbors heard, at least this is the story. It might have been debunked later, but as a case, it's an important case, right? That the neighbors might have heard her and didn't act, and they couldn't be brought up on charges for that. But in Jewish tradition, this was taught to me in 8th grade, this story, that it's obligatory to us that you can't stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. If there is a Roda pursuing you to kill you, you must intervene, like you said, in a thoughtful way that will actually be efficacious, and not do more harm. But there is a sense that you need to help save that person who's being pursued. So
yeah, in that case, there is actually people that walked into the courtyard, turned around and walked the other way when they saw what was happening. So yeah, no, it's, especially if you're an Amritdhari Sikh, that's impossible.
Yeah.
I was curious, any of you, what questions do you ask people who approach you? Sometimes questions go both ways, as conversations do too. So I was wondering if people comment, do you have any questions you ask them?
How are you? Hope you're having a great day.
Yeah, nothing specific that's kind of like my go-to question, other than what like any secular person would say,
Right.
you know, pleasantries and whatnot. Yeah, you know, if I'm having a deeper conversation with someone, you know, what's on your heart? Like, I think that that's always, you know, giving people an opportunity for introspection. I think that that's like, that's always an opportunity for people to go deeper in a relationship and just understand, you know, where people are, to understand the human experience more. To know that I'm a person who's not just, you know, surface level is fine, but like there's actually an understanding. There's something called the I thou or I it relationship. You can have an I it relationship. You can, like, you know, this is like a grocery store checker, right? Like you come in, they say paper or plastic, they bag your groceries and you're out, right? And you're kind of itting them, like they are. It's not a human interaction. It's not a human to human interaction at that point, right? So it takes some presence of mind to say, and how are you today? And like, you know, oh, do you like this ice cream brand too? Like, so do I, or whatever, you know, to get out of this I it relationship and to get into an I thou relationship. An I thou relationship is a relationship where you're fully present for and with another person, and you're exchanging conversation in the way that we are right now, right? Just being present, being aware, listening to each other and responding to what each other is offering up in love and gratitude. So
Being present, truly present for another person.
yeah,
That's, keep listening.
you can't be I thou all the time though, right? So don't
Sure.
put yourself down if you know, like if you're like really running in to get, you know, Tylenol for a screaming baby or something, that, you know, you can't be like, and how are you? Do you like Tylenol? You can't always do that. But you know, it's a different way to think about, you know, how we interact with people. There's also a word in the Torah that says hineni. I used to have that as my license plate a long time ago. Hineni means here I am, not like here I am present, right? But here I am, I'm present with you to respond to you and who you are in the fullness of who you are with the fullness of who I am. And God asked in the Torah, God asked Abraham, you know, Abraham, and he said, Hineni, here I am, ready to respond to you. So that presence of mind and of spirit is something that I try to cultivate as much as possible.
Fantastic. Time is quickly passing, so if you don't mind, I'm going to go to the third question. I could just talk about questions all day long, but so I'm just going to ask the next, just forge ahead. And so how do you, as leaders or your councils, you know, leaders in your community, how do you discover the needs of individuals in your community or in the communities in which you're embedded in? And there's I think I'll start with that first because I have a bunch of follow-up questions. But if I ask them all at once, we'll forget all of them anyway. So we'll just start with that one. So how do you discover, as leaders in your community or parish councils or what have you, how do you discover the needs of an individual in your congregation or individual that approaches you or the community at large, Los Angeles or Rock or wherever you're located?
Everybody in the Sikh community gossips. I mean, there's no way. If I'm in India and I'm planning to go from Delhi to Amritsar, they know it in Amritsar without me telling them before I've made my airplane reservation. It's simple. I mean, everybody in our community communicates. You just have to listen. If you're someone in a position where you can do something or has a capacity, it's just communication. I mean, it's simple communication, and you know, unless someone has a an issue like domestic violence or something like this, that's a closet issue in the community that people don't like to talk about, then even those people come to seek help, but they don't do it in normal channels. They come inside the community usually to do it. But that's how I mean, you just pay attention, I think, is the best way. So, Rabbi?
Yeah, I was going to say, in a word, relationship, uh, knowing who a person is on that deep level, and then understanding, what events are affecting them, and understanding what down the line might be affecting them. I think, yeah, listening, as you mentioned, listening to who they are and what they're going through. I think also the news, watching the news, right? Like what's going on right now. We know that this has to be affecting a lot of people in my community and other communities, of course. So for that, I emailed people to ask them if they'd like to talk. I'd call people, check in with people. And not just people in my community, as you said, Karen, right? It's not just about my community. I've called other interfaith leaders. I have checked in with just a broad swath of people, just to check in and see, where are you with this, and how can I be of support? How can we support each other through this? And also, I guess we have like a public form of gossip. So thinking about your thought, Nirinjan, we're not supposed to gossip, but there is in the prayer service, in a Jewish prayer service, we do lift up prayers for those in need of healing. And so again, listening to who's mentioning whose name and saying, oh, this person is in need of something, in need of presence, not presence, gifts, but presence, like being with someone. And also we lift up the names of the deceased. So it could be the anniversary of the death of someone. And so just seeing like, oh, Rabbi Miller lifted up the 10-year anniversary of her grandfather's death. Let me just check in with her and, what's she feeling and what does that mean to her? And what was the relationship like? You can't assume what the relationship was like either. So just, following up with people and letting them know, like, I heard you when you stood up for this prayer, and I heard you that this is something that's on your mind. I've also taken to asking people at a Shabbat service, or the Sabbath day service, the evening service on Friday nights, the Kabbalat Shabbat. I ask people to think about something beautiful from this past week that we're honoring and celebrating, because that also will tell us a lot too. And also it's just good for the rest of the community. If a baby's born, like, that we should all celebrate that. We should all have a little bit of joy. We should share each other's joys if we're sharing each other's sorrows as well. So I'll do that. And then at a Shabbat morning service, there's a whole blessing for the miracles of every day, the everyday miracles, which sounds like an oxymoron, but they're the everyday miracles, like a sunrise. We got a sunrise here from a picture I took in Hawaii. Consciousness, being able to sit up. We can never take these things for granted. They're everyday miracles. So I also ask people to add their own everyday miracles. What else are they grateful for today? Oftentimes it's, gathering in community, or, their grandchild is visiting, right? Great. Like, then I can follow up with them afterwards. Like, oh, tell me about your grandchild. Oh, I want to meet them, and just being present and attuned to their lives, and having your finger on the pulse of where people are. And a lot of my interfaith council work helps keep me abreast of what's going on in the community, and where we as a community can work in other community organizations. I'm on the board of the Women's Rabbinic Network, for example, and what's the state of women in the rabbinate right now, and women in non-binary and genderqueer rabbis, like, what is the state of that, and how can we be helpful to create greater equity, safety, and respect. So those are some.
I think it's important that, and sometimes we forget this, but as representatives, that we let the community know that it's okay, that there's help available. Because some people might not know where to get help. They should always know, even if we refer them to some type of service, that they can come and they can say, because that's probably the biggest thing to reaching out to people is letting them know that you can be reached out to. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah. And that you can hold it all.
If you don't do that, you lose track of a lot of the stuff that people could come and could get help by.
And that your shoulders are big enough to hold all of it, right? To hold the joys and the sorrows. And that, and I explicitly say in services, that God is broad enough to, celebrate and mourn. And, there is space for that here. And implicitly there's space with me, right? That I can be present with people in all of those instances. And it's an honor for me to bear that kind of sacred witness and walk that path with people and be there. And it's really important to me to champion people along too, like even on their grief journey, just to like be there with them. There's a rabbinic teaching of that says that above every blade of grass is an angel telling it, grow. And I just think about that as, I'm not telling people to grow, or I'm not like a coach like that, but what I am there is to just encourage people and to help people make sense of what's happening, the good and the bad, right? That's what the rituals are for, is to be there at those transitional life moments, which, even if that's a doctor no longer taking your insurance and now you have to change your doctor, that can be a really traumatic process, especially if you have a file this thick at your doctor's office, you have chronic illness and so forth. So just being there with people to give the spiritual support, and where necessary, as you mentioned, Nirinjan, referring people out, and just keeping a Rolodex. Not that I have a Rolodex, so this is 2023, but keeping a long list of people in the community who can help different people in different life situations, that can kind of complement the spiritual work that I do is really important. And it would be great for people to know that.
So that really dates us. If we even know what a Rolodex is, that means we're old.
I used to have a little one on my desk.
I knew I was getting old when I told the bar mitzvah students that I would Xerox them a copy, and they're like, "What's a Xerox?" I'm like, yes.
I was curious, as we're talking about assisting people, and I don't know if this will be, it's kind of hard to articulate as a question, maybe hard to articulate as an answer, but because it has to do with the job. You seem to do it so naturally, both of you. How do you know how to assist when somebody comes and asks you to help them in some way? How do you know what to do next? And what's the best way for that person in that moment in time, that situation? And we also had a question of about spiritual resources for people who are seeking, if that's applicable, if they're seeking spiritual resources, what kinds of things, or prayers or services or rituals do you provide? That makes sense?
Totally.
Yeah, I don't think it's a one size fits all. I mean, every situation can be really different. The important thing is, like we said before, you have to listen. You have to be neutral. Whatever they're going through, you have to be neutral and objective and calm, and not tell them they have to think the way that you do, but help them explore how they find their own solution.
You're accompanying them.
Right.
Yeah,
I
or you
never doubt that power
you're supporting them.
Sacred bearing witness. I mean, that's a huge, some people just really literally need to be heard. Like, I'm going through a tough time right now. I just need someone to hear it. I'm going to quote the movie White Men Can't Jump. I'm sorry. I always quote something in pop culture. There's a scene where Rosie Perez says to Woody Harrelson, honey, I'm thirsty. And he gets up to go he gets up and he like goes to the doorway, and she's like, where are you going? I just told you I'm thirsty. He's like, yeah, I'm going to go get you a glass of water. And she's like, no, when I tell you I'm thirsty, I don't want you to go get me a glass of water. I want you to say, I too know what it means to be thirsty. I too have had thirst, right? And that's like a funny example, especially in that movie. But I do think that it's really important that when we are present with people, we ask, would you like some connections out? Do you, would you like me to hear what you're saying, or even just acknowledging, I've heard what you're saying, asking people what next step that they would like. The other thing, like, again, when I was a chaplain at UCLA Medical Center, asking people, like, what's keeping you strong in this moment? Or in prior times of difficulty, and we're just talking about difficulties, but this goes for like good times as well. In prior times of difficulty, what has kept you strong? What's been healing for you, right? For some, it's calling a friend. For some, it's listening to music. For some, it's just watching America's Funniest Videos, right? For some, it's prayer and text. For some, it's connecting with their faith community. So, asking people, like, what's keeping you strong? What do you think would be helpful for you in this moment? And then responding to people in that way can be really helpful. But again, at the very least, just being present with people. It's hard because I like being fixed. I like it when people aren't just sitting there with me. I like them to give me ideas and answers of what to do next. But some people really just want to be heard, and that is something to be honored as well.
Yeah, did you guys lose my picture?
No, I see you.
No, see you.
I'm trying to figure out what I did here on my computer. Oh, there I am. Okay, sorry.
Did you have any follow-up?
It's what she said. It's just important things. It's important to listen. And she reminded me of something that happens between me and my wife occasionally. She'll come in and she'll start talking about all the headaches she had today and what she's gone through. And my first answer is, okay, well, I can fix this by doing this and this. She says, shut up. I just listen.
Right.
Because I'm a guy. My shortcut is, okay, we'll go to the hardware store, get a hammer and nail and fix it.
Right. Right.
So it's not that easy sometimes. So.
And I may or may not have been alluding to my relationship with my wife as well.
But again, reiterating one more time, listening is what it's all about. It's not about trying to take them to your space. It's not about trying to do anything like that. Is be neutral, listen, and if they ask for help, offer it.
Wow. It's kind of like a reference interview to the third level.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
figuring out which book to pull out off the shelf.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. How do I, and sometimes I was thinking also when you're answering a question for somebody in library, sometimes you also get, they don't really want an answer so much as they want somebody to listen as well, to whatever kind of day they're having, or probably just want somebody to be there. And yeah, I identified that a little bit from what both of you were saying. Just sometimes you just gotta listen, and then respond.
There's a really good question in the question box. I don't know if we're at that point where we're going to start. Did we finish all our regular questions?
No, but it's a good time. We've pretty much answered this one, but I see the questions too, and if you're willing to answer them now, I'm not. I can totally break the rules, so I'm okay with that.
There
go.
is a question about grief and how do you help people in grief, experiencing grief, even if they're not a member of your faith community or anything. Well, my simple is quick and easy. My answer is quick and easy. We're all human beings. It has to get that off. There are humanists, people who don't have a faith that are in grief. You have to be able to, if they're open to it, reach out and comfort anybody. And you do that on the human, on the heart level, not on the head level where you got to think like this, not on the physical level where you have to go do this and this and this. You just have to be there. And with a lot of people, they don't want to grieve alone. They need to know that someone there can hear them and feel their pain. So
totally. Yeah, again, it's that sacred presence, that idea of not being alone in a time of grief, like with the Minion that is required, the prayer quorum in Judaism. But I think, again, that can be very helpful for people to, like you said, not be alone, not feel isolated. I think that part of the challenge of the isolation is the feeling of being punished somehow. Like this person died because of, this, why is God punishing me? Why am I being punished? Why is, life so difficult and lonely and isolating? I think that a lot of that can be addressed just simply by showing up, as you mentioned. In Judaism, it's actually a Jewish prescription that if somebody dies, there's only two things to do. You just go to their house and you bring food, and you're not actually supposed to say anything. You are just there present with the person in wherever they are in their grief journey. And we know, right, there's the seven aspects of grief, right? The seven stages of grief, which has been added to, and they're not linear and they go back and forth, but seeing, like, is this person in there, is there anger going on, is there sadness going on, and when I'm just kind of hearing what they need, or do they need like the dishes in their sink done so that they can feel like some sense of order in their life in a place where it's highly disordered. So not feeling obligated to say something, but just showing up, just being present and saying, I'm here, I care. Not with words, but with presence. Or with words, depends.
That's fantastic. Would you two mind answering another question from an anonymous guest?
Sure,
I saw that one too. I think it sounds like a younger member of our greater human community, and connecting spiritually.
What was the question?
What's the question?
I'll read it. I don't know
Thanks.
if you guys can see it.
but
My family
since you
emigrated
started.
in the 80s to the US. We grew up in a place where we had to travel long distances to our temples. And because my parents were always working, we only practiced our faith during major holidays. I don't think I've connected to our faith as strongly as my elders wanted. How would you recommend, whoops, I just lost it. How would you recommend someone reconnect to their faith? There's a lot of shame and vulnerability that the young, well, first of all, give up on the shame and the guilt. They're kind of useless emotions, if you'll forgive me. Shame and guilt usually revolve around someone else trying to do you what they think you should do. What you need to do is go into your heart and find out what you need to do, how you want to connect, and what that can do for you. There, I'm done.
I was gonna finish your sentence for you, and I thought that would be a lovely moment. But
Sorry.
yeah. So it says a vulnerability that the younger generation feels when we don't necessarily follow cultural and religious traditions. So, I mean, I would, a lot of times people come to me asking to perform a marriage for them, that they, like I said, had a bar mitzvah maybe, or know that they're Jewish, but they kind of like come to me. In Judaism, we kind of beat our chest when we're feeling guilty, and like the holiday of Yom Kippur, we say like, I have sinned. So they're kind of coming to me like, I'm Jew-ish, like I'm kind of Jewish, but like I haven't really done anything. So, and they judge themselves against like a litmus test that other people have put on them, like, do you keep kosher and do you go to Shabbat services, right? Like those are like the two things that really only matter. And like I said, you like, there's a question, can you be a good Jewish person and drive on Shabbat? And can you be a good Jewish person and, maybe we should be, there's a lot of ways to be a good Jewish person. So I don't think that we putting a narrow restriction on a litmus test of what makes a good whatever religious person is should be there. What I usually tell people, which is the God's honest truth, is like, I actually think that's an exciting time in your life, that you get to forge your own authentic, genuine connection with your tradition, as you mentioned, Nirinjan, right? As you feel like you would be meaningful to you. And in the case of a marriage, right, as the couple would feel. So, I think I would flip it around on its head and say, actually, this is like a very wonderful time of life, because rather than just kind of being robotic and going through the motions, oh, my parents said that this is how I have to engage with God, or this is how I have to practice my religious faith, that actually, like, the world is open up to you, and you can actually decide, like, what's actually meaningful to me and what traditions do I want to share with the world. So getting to then experiment with all of those and identify those for yourself can be really invigorating, actually.
Yeah, well, guilt is definitely an Abrahamic thing. In the Dharmic practices, we don't have a lot of use for it. If you think you should have done something differently, go do it differently and fix it.
There you go. It's I'll just give one other thing. The Torah, our sacred text, it begins with the letter bet. And the question's like, why does it begin with the letter bet and not aleph? Like, it's like if the Torah began with a B instead of an A, why the second letter of the aleph bet and not the first? And the rabbis say, because that letter kind of looks like this. And we read from right to left. I don't know how I'm being switched on the screen here, but you get the idea. And there's a little dot in a bet. And the idea is this, that you shouldn't concentrate too hard on what's above, below, or behind you, but just think about what's that next step. I think there was a Disney movie that said, like, what's your next best step, next best move, like, just concentrate on what's right in front of you. What's that next step that you want to take that would make you feel good about being a human being on this planet at this time? And that's what you should take. And that's going to get you where you want to go. And it's exciting. It's exciting.
It makes me think of Singh of Jesuits, of meeting people. Their emphasis is meeting people where they are. And if you can find holy people or just community member, part of a community, if you could find a community where you can meet somebody where they are, then I think a lot of that guilt and shame, you can just put that, it's easier to put aside and move forward in a path.
And some of our greatest rabbis, like, look at like Rabbi Akiva in the Jewish tradition. I don't know, I know you mentioned temple, but I'm just saying, and like for a Jewish person who's asking this, right? Rabbi Akiva didn't start studying till he was 40 years old, right? And he became this great revered rabbi. And there was another rabbi, his name was Reish Lakish. He was known as being like a marauder and bandit before he became a rabbi, right? So that's like those are other, pathways. Like, not everyone's path is just like linear, and that's okay. That, these guys became great rabbis themselves, and everyone has their own path. And like everyone said, just what's the next step, focus on that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Nirinjan. I think we can continue with some more Q&A here. So one question was, what are some of the biggest challenges or needs you've seen in your communities? And what do people need help with most right now?
I think I'll go first. I think, it's really funny. The Sikh community is a very kind of like humble, bootstrap type of community, hopefully humble. And one of the things that we need people to do is know who we are. And that sounds kind of funny. And Sikhism comes from a culture in India where you don't promote yourself. It's viewed as bad manners to try and lift yourself up, verbally or in conversation to other people. It's, like that. But the simple reality is, in America, Sikhs have had a very hard time because nobody understands who we are in a lot of different ways. And like I mentioned before, after 9/11, people thought they were mad at Muslims or Islam, so they'd shoot Sikhs. There's even a cartoon I saw once that I used to use in my presentations, and that's two guys beating someone on the ground, and they'd say that'll teach this guy, this Muslim, to attack the Trade Center, and the other guy says, well, I think he's Indian, I don't think he's Muslim, and the other guy says, well, close enough. Mm-hmm. The simple reality is I just encourage people to get to know more, not just about Sikhs, but about the other faith communities, and not be worried that it's going to taint you in your own practice. I'll come back to that again. The simple reality, knowledge equals capacity. And the capacity is to understand and to reach out to other people and communicate with them. And that's much more important than you think. Mm-hmm. People seem to gather together out of love or hate these days. Too many are gathering together out of who they hate, and that's their common bond. What we need to do is gather with love and understanding, so that we can build that, and we can reach out to those who are hating because they've never really experienced love, and try and get that. Again, I'm coming back to this concept that we actually could live in a peaceful world.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, yeah, knowing the Jewish community also, yes, I second that. Just getting to know who we are. What does the Jewish community need? Knowing who we are. I get also to combat, hatred directed toward us, anti-Semitism. And also at this time, the Jewish community is in a lot of grief. Whatever your stance is on Israel, the events of the massacre that recently took place has been triggering to a lot of people on an ancestral trauma level. And so I was just on the phone with a clergy member, a friend of mine, and she's like, what do I do? What do I say to Jewish people? And I said, just say, I care. I'm here to hear you. Not that not that will change a political position or anything like that, but just, again, like, as you mentioned, like on that human level, like I'm here again, like that idea of that we're going through grief, and for those who are Jewish and identify as left-wing, right? There's also been a lot of challenge to exist that way as well. Again, because of trauma of ancestry, but also because of the way that like power dynamics work, and voices are diminished or magnified. So I do think, like, just responding to people in grief, I think that a large portion of the Jewish community, even in all of our diversity, is in grief, whatever our political position. There is a lot of diversity within Judaism on that. I do think everyone's in like this shocking, like immediate grief. And they always say, don't make any major decisions within 6 months of someone you love dying. And a lot of major decisions are being made now. And it's just a really, really difficult position to be in.
Well, what's happening not only causes grief in the Jewish community or the Palestinian or Muslim community, it hurts the heart of all those people who care.
Yeah.
This type of savagery, this type of disregard for humanity and stuff is the ultimate point of why we can't just sit around and say there should be peace someday. We have to actively work for it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I also want to encourage our attendees to please ask questions directly in the chat or through the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. While we wait for more questions, I have another one. what are some service projects you've been involved with that you're especially proud of?
A good one. Nirinjan, would you like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because I don't think about the ones I'm done. I'm thinking about the next one I have to do. But the reality is just, service projects, a lot of Sikhs are, as I said during my last panel, Sikhs are into feeding people. Just as a bottom line, no one should be hungry. So at any Sikh Gurdwara, any Sikh temple, if you're hungry, if there's people there, you can go there and you can get fed. That's like a bottom line. At the Golden Temple in India, a lot of people in India live on the streets, and they don't have a shelter over their head, and they don't always have a way to get a meal. But at the Golden Temple, we feed from donations from our community over 100,000 people per day at that one location. So I think the important thing is look around you and see what the need is. You can't limit yourself to just one thing. If you want to help, you can help by elevating people emotionally. You can help by elevating people materially. You can help by elevating people spiritually, and you don't, again, have to tell them you have to do it my way. Just tell them how to think about in your own being how you want to raise yourself up, and know that you can do it. So I think that's my quick answer. Long topic.
Yeah, I think also like the idea of service, service projects, are we talking about service projects or social service projects or social justice projects? I know I usually stay more in the lane of social justice projects, not that they're equal, like a binary, but I do think that, so some of my proudest moments are, organizing with hotel workers who are getting low wages and helping them, increase their salaries and benefits packages, right? And helping employers understand the human experience of that and why that's actually good for business to be able to pay your workers a living wage instead of just a minimum wage or less. When I think of the service projects I do, I think of a lot of interfaith service projects. I remember in 2000, we like painted a wall in like this park with, like as an interfaith project, and we got to talking through that, like that's an early one. And recently we did blanket making for Children's Hospital for kids. We did that with an interfaith community, and then with another Jewish synagogue, we also made blankets, but we made it for trans youth who were in transitional housing or homeless. And doing these works with our hands and being able to be present with each other and share and connect based on the intention to do good and change the world for better is incredibly uniting as well. So a good community service project is really wonderful as well.
That's fantastic. So any other questions? Any other questions?
I'll say one thing about, because Rabbi mentioned something, when you serve people, if you're looking for service to do, don't pick what's easy. Look and see who in your community is the most marginalized community, whether it's LGBTQ, trans, homeless, anything like that. It's good to reach out and help people on other levels too, but help the people that are in the most pain, that are in the most need. So if you're thinking about service projects, think about that.
Yeah, one of there is a precept in Judaism of kind of minimizing harm. How can you minimize harm the most? And there was someone who wanted to convert to Judaism, and he came to this one Rabbi Shammai, and he said, "Teach me all of Judaism while I stand on one foot," meaning like in 30 seconds or less. And Rabbi Shammai's like, "Get out of here." So then he goes to this other Rabbi Hillel, who's like, Shammai is like adversary, but in a positive way. And he says, that which is hateful to you, do not do to another person. That is the entirety of the Torah. Now go and study. And I just love that idea, right? Like, just do no harm. If nothing else, do no harm. Just even if it's not love your neighbor, which we should all, love our neighbors as well. But yes, looking for the ways that we can minimize harm, and definitely is one of the ways to think about it.
Fantastic. We have about less than 10 minutes left. We got another question. And it's a resource question. How would you support those who have experienced domestic violence? Are there resources in your community and/or support groups? Nirinjan, would you like to start, or Rabbi?
Yeah, I'll start quickly, because in the Sikh community culturally in India is still a rather chauvinistic community, even though as a religion base, we recognize that everybody is equal. And there are a lot of what they call closet issues, which are social issues we have in the US that we do our best to deal with, but really are left to family circles and family cells in that particular culture to deal with. And domestic violence is one. So, I was a city commissioner for years and years. And because people in my community knew I worked in a governmental position, when they're having issues like that, they'd come and see me, and I'd direct them to on whatever scale they needed. If there was domestic violence, whether they needed to go to a shelter, whether they needed to go to something else. There's a lot of resources like that in the city of Los Angeles to help people. But for the most part, when I'd get a few questions, I'd go to one of the Gurdwaras and ask them, well, we should do a seminar on this, because people in the community may be experiencing it. Oh no, we don't talk about that. And in this particular community with this particular culture, it's not a positive thing, but it's a way that Western understanding can get into that Eastern culture and help people relax and find resources when they're in a difficult situation. And there are still some arranged marriages in the Sikh community, which is traditional in India, not so much anymore. But sometimes people end up in a marital situation that's not benefiting them. And we have to let people know that there can't be a stigma attached to that. You have to do what's best for yourself and get out of any type of abusive situation you're in. So there's a lot of different help on a lot of different levels. Again, it depends on the domestic violence, but I think the most important thing I can say is don't think that you have to live with it. You don't. You need to get help. You have one life, not in the case of the Sikh community, we believe in reincarnation, but you have this life and you should make the most of it. And you should take care of yourself and not allow others to abuse you. And abuse is obvious. It's not like, oh, I'm thinking this is abuse, but it's just really the way he or she is. It just can't work like that. You have the right to a happy, balanced, good life, and don't be afraid to pursue that. So if there's domestic violence involved, seek help. And if you can start with your own faith community, that's a great place. If you don't get help there, try what's the number, 211 here in LA? Or
Yeah, it's 211
I think it is.
for all help.
That'll get you basic governmental services that can try to help you. So yes, don't just put up with it. It's not something you need to do.
Yeah, I think, in our community, we have a healing circle every single Thursday. And in that, we do pray for, we lift up those, one of our members started doing it. It's really beautiful. She started mentioning anyone who's in a narrow place. So in the Exodus story, the word for Egypt is Mitzrayim, which we're not saying like Egypt was an oppressive place, but like any narrow place can feel oppressive. And so we pray every week for anyone who feels like they're in that narrow place, for relief from that, for, moving forward to, the land of freedom, right? So, that definitely, we do try to address a spiritual angle of domestic violence. We also have survivors of all kinds of domestic violence and incest and sexual violence in our community. So we just kind of really hold sacred space for each other and allow for just blessings. And because we're an international community and it's on Zoom, we feel like those prayers are like ricocheting around the world, and I feel like an extra magnification. For the referring out piece, right? Because I'm not a social worker and not someone trained to be a psychologist in this, or I don't also know the resources, right? Because some people are really trapped, existentially trapped in these narrow places in these homes, and really feel like they can't escape and actually cannot. So for that, I would refer people to Peace Over Violence. It's an organization that Patty Giggins is in charge of in Los Angeles. And they have a National Day of Denim, where people wear denim for, remembering those who are survivors of domestic violence and those who have not survived domestic violence. But I would definitely turn to her if you ask me who's in my Rolodex, who I'm picking up the phone to first. It's her. There's also Jewish Women International. If someone's Jewish, or even if they're not Jewish, Jewish Women International would help. But that's another resource that people can turn to. So Peace Over Violence and Jewish Women International would both be places that I would help direct people to resources.
Thank you so much. You shared such valuable wisdom and resources, and hopefully we can get that information out to people who need it. Sadly, we're out of time, and I don't want to keep you. I could talk forever. I really can. That's why my last name is Noise. So before we go, I just want to remind our audience of a couple of things. LA County Library has a bi-monthly spirituality and religion newsletter, and that will put that in the chat for me, hopefully soon. If not, we'll email it to you with a link to the recording of this event. If you want a bespoke religion and spirituality book list, recommendations from LA County librarians, you can just walk in, give us a call, or there is a email program that we'll link to, that you can just link, and a librarian will create a book list just for you. Just answer a few questions, all online. Get your answer in about a couple weeks. Not that, less than a couple days. Weeks, that's bad. I really would encourage you, if you enjoyed this conversation, we've got one more to go next week. It's the fourth one. Let me see if I have that pulled up. I have so many windows up. Sorry, guys. I'll just put it all in the thank you. We will have one more to go. If you want to see past events, go to our YouTube channel. You can review recordings of this series, and you can also for free check out all the other recordings we have. We'll teach you how to we have book discussions. Teach you how to mend clothes. We've got everything on there. So check us out. And I want to thank Rabbi Miller and Nirinjan for sharing your time and your wisdom with us tonight. As clergy, I know your time is, I'm aware that your time is very limited. And so just to stop by LA County Library is such a gift and a treasure. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure talking with you and listening really to your wisdom. It was so fantastic. Last two meetings, Rory Two Bears De La Rosa sang a blessing. I am not cut out to do that. So instead, I just want to share a quote attributed to J.R.R. Tolkien about education. True education is a kind of never-ending story, a matter of continual beginnings, of habitual fresh starts and persistent newness. So have a great evening, everyone. Be safe, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow at the library. So good evening,
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.